All right. Shalom, shalom, shalom. Peace and blessings to the 12 tribes of Israel who are scattered to the four quarters of the earth. I'm going to start by giving all praises, honor, and great esteem unto the Most High Power, Yahweh, Bashem, Hamashiach, Wamalak, Yahweh Shai, and again to the 12 tribes of Israel who are scattered to the four quarters of the earth. I say Shalom, Wa Baruchim, that is peace and blessings. And I cannot wait to the day when the Most High brings us back together and we are once again 12 tribes, one family, one nation under the Most High Power under one covenant, back in our own land with a heart of flesh and no more a heart of stone, with our enemies, our adversaries, and all those who hate us under our feet. All praises to the Almighty Yah. Hallelujah.
So be it. Hallelujah.
Yes, indeed. I'm joined by my most esteemed Akidaniah. Shalom, Aki.
Shalom, Maki. Shalom, Yasharal. Yahweh Bahashem, Hamashiach, Wamalak, Yahweh Shai, Barakatah.
Hallelujah. Yes, indeed. Uh, most High Yahweh. In the name of his beloved son, Yahweh Shai, the Messiah, King, bless you indeed.
I might have said that Yahweh Shai twice.
Did you? Okay, my
It's been a long week. It's been a long week.
bad. Indeed. It's all good. It's all good. But yeah, so all praises to the Abba. We are back again for another video review. And you know, I'm we got an interesting video for us today to look at. We got a couple actually. The American New Age of Slavery. If you understand, during the Emancipation Proclamation, after that was put into place, there was an additional uh, input that went in that said, with the exception of incarceration. So slavery was outlawed with the exception of incarceration. And if you know our history, you know that they took full advantage of that and sought every means they could to put our people in incarceration so that they could put us
Mhm.
right back in slavery. So uh, let's get to it here. We're gonna jump into this video, and then we'll have another one after this. So here we go.
Every day, thousands of black men and women are funneled into a system deliberately engineered to extract wealth from black communities and treat black people like America has always been kneeling on the throats of our people. We like to think Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves in 1863 and that Martin Luther King Jr. ended racism in 1965. But this couldn't be further from the truth. Oh, so you want to know the truth? The truth is that little has changed since the days of slavery, and Jim Crocrats that bought and sold black lives like cattle are still around today. But instead of old top hats and suits, they wear spiffy suits and ties, claiming that they're working to create a safer nation. Whether it's a cotton plantation or an overcrowded prison, the results are all the same. Black lives get reduced to property, and black families are destroyed by a system designed to extract maximum profit from us. In today's video, we're showing you how America's prison industrial complex is slavery rebranded for modern times. You'll see how exactly the system makes millions off of black labor, how efforts to reform the system have been intentionally broken, and how the very foundations of this country have been built to keep. Did you know there's a hidden clause in the Constitution that technically allows slavery to continue to this day? It's right there in the 13th Amendment, but most history books conveniently skip over it. The amendment, ratified in 1865, voluntary servitude are abolished, except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted. Those 15 words weren't thrown in randomly. They were deliberately included to create a massive loophole. This exception clause was a calculated move by lawmakers who understood exactly what they were doing. As soon as the ink dried on the 13th Amendment, what were called black codes, designed to criminalize normal behaviors that were common among newly freed black people. Imagine without a purpose, or walking at night. Those were actual crimes that could get you locked up. Other offenses included hunt prisoners. What's even more revealing is how quickly convict working. The exact same cotton fields and plantations they had just been freed from. Destroyed prisons from the Civil War and economic depression, found an easy way to generate income without having 1870s. An astounding 95% of people in criminal leasing contracts states revenue. These were thousands of black men, women, and even children that were funneled into this system that looked suspiciously like the slavery that had supposedly been abolished. The conditions under convict leasing were often worse than slavery had been. Under slavery, enslaved people were runners who had economic incentives to keep them alive and working. But under convict leasing, private companies had no reason to care about prisoners' well-being. They could simply be replaced when they died or became too ill to work. And while white prisoners were kept behind prison walls, black prisoners were deliberately put to work in public view, a visible reminder of what happened to those who stepped out of line. By the way, if you're enjoying the content so far and support the message we're trying to spread, go ahead and subscribe to our channel. Every extra one of y'all helps bring awareness to all these stories that need to be told. Fast forward to today, and not much has changed except the packaging. Federal prisoners earn between 12 and 40 cents per hour. In Texas, inmates receive zero compensation for their labor, despite the Texas correctional industries being valued at nearly $89 million in 2014. Major corporations continue to profit from this arrangement, with 7% of state prisoners and 18% of federal prisoners working for for-profit companies. So who's really benefiting from this system? It's not the taxpayers, and it's certainly not the communities most affected by mass incarceration. Private prison corporations make billions through government contracts that pay them per prisoner. They profit from the cheap labor of inmates who make everything from office furniture to military equipment. Even the basic necessities of prison life have been monetized. Phone calls that cost dollars per minute, overpriced commissary items, and paid video visits create a constant stream of revenue extracted primarily from poor communities of color. The modern prison industrial complex is a network of interconnected interests and institutions that depend on keeping cells filled to maintain profitability. For private prisons especially, empty beds mean lost profit. Hundreds of corporations have their fingers in this pie, making money from what is essentially forced labor under a different name. Those corporations need their cells filled somehow, and that's where America's policing system comes into play. What most history classes never mention is that the first organized police forces in America weren't created to protect communities or solve crimes. They were established specifically to monitor, control, and terrorize black people. The origins of modern policing trace directly back to slave patrols established in the Carolinas in the early 1700s. Known as groups of armed white men were formed to serve enslaved proper permission. These patrols operation whip any black person they deemed suspicious, and kill anyone who resisted. What's truly crazy is what they abolished. These slave patrols didn't disappear. They just continued their work under a different title, largely unchanged. The focus wasn't on protecting all citizens equally or solving crimes. It was specifically about monitoring and controlling newly. Today, the data speaks volumes about this continued legacy of racial control. Black Americans are 5 times more likely to be stopped by police without just cause compared to white Americans. When we dig deeper, the pattern becomes even clearer. Black men are twice as likely to be stopped without cause as black women, and black communities know it, with 65% of black adults reporting they feel specifically targeted because of their race. And that's not to mention the militarization of modern-day police forces, particularly in predominantly black neighborhoods. Police departments now receive military-grade equipment and training that focuses on combat rather than community protection. When heavily armed officers patrol black neighborhoods with tactical gear better suited for war zones, it creates an atmosphere of occupation rather than protection. One of the most damning pieces of evidence about the true purpose of modern policing comes directly from the government's stance on the war against narcotics. John Ehrlichman, domestic policy advisor to President Nixon, later admitted the shocking truth behind this campaign that has devastated black communities for generations. In his own words, We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or blacks, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with and then criminalizing them both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night in the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the whole thing? Of course we did. Wow. The war on drugs was deliberately designed to criminalize Black Americans, disrupt their communities, and remove their leaders from society. And it worked exactly as planned, filling prisons with a disproportionate number of Black Americans for nonviolent offenses while leaving the power structure intact. So what's the connection between these historical patterns and today's policing practices? From slave patrols to modern police departments, the fundamental purpose hasn't changed: controlling blacks and maintaining racial hierarchy. The methods have evolved and become more sophisticated, but the targets and outcomes remain consistent. Today's practices of racial profiling, excessive force, and over-policing in Black communities aren't bugs in the system. They're features working exactly as designed. When caught in the jaws of America's criminal justice system, Black Americans face an orchestrated machine designed to ensure conviction. Research reveals something disturbing. A white man with a felony conviction has better job prospects than a Black man with a completely clean record. The justice system creates a mountain of barriers. Cash bail functions as a powerful tool for discrimination, despite appearing race-neutral on paper. Before incarceration, Black men earn a median income of just $17,000 compared to $39,000 for white men. This economic gulf means a $5,000 bail might be insurmountable for many Black defendants, leaving them locked up while awaiting trial. Jobs, housing, and sometimes custody of children, all before conviction. Consider the case of Khalif Browder, who spent 3 years at Rikers Island awaiting trial for allegedly stealing a backpack, a charge eventually dismissed. Unable to post bail, he endured solitary confinement and abuse before his release. 2 years later, he ended up taking his own life. Under such immense pressure, many accept plea deals regardless of actual guilt, acquiring a permanent conviction record simply because they couldn't afford temporary freedom. For those reaching trial, Black defendants face another obstacle through jury selection. Though the Supreme Court prohibited race-based juror exclusion in Batson versus Kentucky, prosecutors routinely eliminate Black jurors using flimsy, race-neutral justifications. This practice ensures many Black defendants face predominantly white juries, dramatically reducing their chances of fair treatment. This raises the question: who benefits from a system that keeps prisons packed with Black Americans? The prison industrial complex operates as a network of financial interests, from private prison corporations to prison service providers. Their business model depends on high incarceration rates, and they actively maintain those rates through political donations, lobbying for tough-on-crime legislation, and fighting reforms that would reduce prison populations. When prison doors swing open, they don't lead to freedom. For Black Americans caught in the criminal justice system, walking out of prison means entering an invisible cage designed with one purpose: to pull them right back in. In 11 states, more than 1 in 5 Black citizens have permanently lost their right to vote, effectively silencing their political voice forever. These felony disenfranchisement laws aren't accidental side effects. They're the direct descendants of post-Civil War tactics used to suppress Black political power after slavery was technically abolished. And for Black prisoners, the prison sentence might end, but the punishment never does. Once you've been branded with a criminal record, you're systematically excluded from the very things needed to rebuild a life. Housing applications denied, food assistance rejected, student loans impossible to obtain. This web of restrictions creates a permanent underclass of citizens, people who've supposedly paid their debt to society, yet find themselves perpetually indebted through legal discrimination. This exclusion from political participation undermines the collective power of entire Black communities. When significant portions of neighborhoods can't vote, those communities lose their ability to elect representatives who might advocate for their interests, or strategy of political marginalization that echoes Jim Crow era in the more palatable language of criminal justice. Studies confirm what many formerly incarcerated people already know. Getting a job callback by half already face discrimination in hiring. This creates a nearly impenetrable barrier to economic stability. Imagine completing your sentence, determined to build a new life, only to face rejection after rejection from employers who won't even consider your application once they see the box that's been checked. Without stable income, people can't support their children. The cycle perpetuates itself as economic desperation pushes people toward survival crimes, sending them right back into the system that failed them in the first place. Meanwhile, those lucky enough to be released on parole or probation find themselves navigating a labyrinth of contradictory requirements, seemingly designed for failure. You must maintain employment, but also make midday check-ins with your parole officer during work hours. You need stable housing, but housing discrimination makes finding a place to live nearly impossible. You're required to pay supervision fees and program expenses, but you can't find a job that pays enough to cover them. Miss a payment or an appointment, and you're violating the terms of your release, which means you could be headed right back to prison. These are intentional tripwires put in place to ensure people end up right back in prison. Even innocent mistakes like missing a meeting due to transportation issues or failing a test because of secondhand exposure can trigger reincarceration. The system creates a maze with no exit, explaining why approximately 76% of released prisoners are rearrested within 5 years. Each time someone cycles back through the system, they generate more revenue for private prison corporations, more jobs for prison staff, and more political capital for tough-on-crime politicians. What's particularly telling is how the system responds to proven alternatives. Things like restorative justice programs that focus on healing rather than punishment, bringing victims, offenders, and communities together to repair harm. Community supervision programs connect formerly incarcerated people with housing assistance, job training, and mental health services, addressing the root causes that lead to reoffending. These approaches consistently demonstrate higher success rates at a fraction of the cost of incarceration. Yet these alternatives remain chronically underfunded and underutilized. In 2012 alone, the United States spent nearly $81 billion on corrections, triple the rate of spending growth on public education over the previous 3 decades. This economic reality reveals the system's true priorities. When effective, cost-efficient alternatives to incarceration exist, but aren't implemented, we have to question why. The answer becomes clear when we follow the money. The financial interests behind mass incarceration have a vested interest in keeping cells filled. Implementing programs that would reduce prison populations threatens their profits, regardless of whether those programs would better serve public safety or human dignity. As you've seen, our nation's history reveals an unbroken chain from plantation slavery to chapters, but a continuing story of tension and action. Then check out our video on neo-slavery, today's mass incarceration.
Man, we're going to get into that one.
Every
I
day,
tell you what, again, this, I didn't know if I mentioned this initially, but Black Stories Untold is the author of this particular video. Wow. Wow. Important information here. You know, these situations, these circumstances happen, saw no way out in the cycle of the car, and he didn't see a way out and killed himself. You know, that's horribly sad. Horribly. Um, whew. Yeah, so what do we do in these situations? You know, how do we fix these problems? You know, is it meant to be fixed, supposed to work? I believe it's the way that they want it to work. That this was designed from the beginning. It's doing exactly, and they don't care about this brother killing himself. You know, they don't care about uh, a lot of these issues that exist with these people. You know, we were talking about before we got on. Uh, what we call it, black fatigue.
Yeah, con.
Yeah. So we were talking about this, post-traumatic stress of being so-called black in America, and it's not just here; it exists other places as well. Uh, I can recall back during the Mike Brown uh, execution, and the people were coming to Ferguson, and those people were pouring in. Somebody said that you think Ferguson is bad. Well, in Brazil, there's a Ferguson every day. Like they hunt and kill black people on a daily basis in Brazil. Of course, we're not getting that news here because we don't know what they're doing over there or what they. But for somebody who's privy to that, this is the existence of the news here. So all of that to say this: it's a hard situation. It's a hard circumstance to deal with, and the system is set up against us. It's set up to do exactly what it's doing, and that's to be against us, to keep us
Mm-hmm.
in the bottom class, and to keep the other people at the top. And unfortunately, this is a sad reality that we got to deal with for a time. But once that time is up, then everything gonna be put to where it needs to. But sadly, this brother here, you know, he didn't get the memo. He didn't get the memo, and all he could see was that he didn't want to try anymore. And it's sad. It's really sad. It's really sad because he's not the only one. It's been a lot of instances. Uh, black so-called black male suicide has skyrocketed over the last few years, and I don't see it going down. Truthfully, so it's a matter of getting secured in yourself and understanding who your power is and putting your trust and your belief and your faith in him and allowing him to operate for this time until he decides. I'm gonna rest there. Go ahead, Aki.
Con, this was upsetting because it's so real. It's so and it's almost generation of I'd say from 15 to 25 are unaware is making financial gain off of their labor, uh and they're able to continue to demonize us in social, on lead a criminal. And that became the so-called black man and continues to be the so-called black man here in America. What do we do about it? Continue to try to enlighten our people of the enemy's ploys. Uh, I would say that most of the brothers that we know are aware and live Yah fearing lives to where the government laws don't really affect us. You know what I mean? Because we're living under Yah's laws. But so many of our people are not, and you know end up being punished. You know what I mean, in this judicial system. Uh, and I see it getting worse. I see it getting worse before it will ever get better. And when it does get better, we can be assured that things will never go back to the way that they were. All praises to the Most High.
Hallelujah. Indeed, indeed. All praises. All right, we're gonna jump to the second video. Now, this particular video comes to us by Aggressive Intelligence. And by the way, links are in the description box. This is a short video here. This is the dog test experiments with shocking results. So let's get to it and through it here.
What if a simple toy could reveal profound truths about a child's self-worth and racial identity? This was the aim of the groundbreaking doll test, conducted by psychologists Mamie and Kenneth Clark in the 1940s. Their work not only highlighted the damaging effects of segregation on Black American children, but also played a pivotal role in the Supreme Court's decision in Brown v. Board of Education. Welcome to Aggressive Intelligence, where we delve into the intricacies of history and its impacts on society. Racial segregation was particularly heartless in America during the 1940s. Two Black American psychologists, Mamie Phipps Clark and Kenneth Bancroft Clark, were out to explore the effect all these systemic inequalities were having on African American children. This was very personal. The motivation reached deep into their experiences with racism and the strong social forces which linked a child's worth to skin color. They wanted to depict through empirical evidence how segregation and psychological development in the tender minds of young Black children. The Clarks knew that children learn through the messages they obtain from this society, and thus their experiment portrayed in regard to preferences between dolls of different races. This key question was chiseled out from the horrific conditions of education and socialization. That's the Jim Crow laws in the South legislatively dictated racial inequality at all levels, bring attention to the psychological effects. The Clarks started their research when America was going through a very turbulent time. The notorious and any establishment where Black people institutionalized against them. When it came to education, Black schools were young Black children. The Clarks attempted to study this feeling with their research were acquiring the inferior stereotypes of their race, and these seemed to influence self-concept. By calling out and addressing these themes, the Clarks had developed a framework through which their experiments later on became instrumental to understand racial identity and its psychic impact. The Clark doll test is an ingeniously simple, yet amazingly penetrating experiment that probed racial perceptions in children. While administering their test, the Clarks presented 4 dolls, 2 white with yellow hair and 2 black with black hair, to 3 to 7-year-old children. The children were then asked a series of direct questions such as, which doll do you like to play with? Which doll looks like you? Which doll is the nice doll? And which doll looks bad? This format was used to assess preferences and perceived characteristics associated with each doll. Each question exposed deeper biases that were centered on the societal views on race. In letting children choose between the dolls, and in assigning attributes to them, the Clarks tried to quantify the effects of segregation on Black American self-identity. The basic question was, therefore, whether or not societal messages on race had sunk deep enough to alter a child's self-image and racial preferences. According to the Clarks, the children's preference for some dolls over others offered a telling comment on their internalization of race relations as dictated by the society around them. Such attention to the influence of the society positioned the doll test as a critical tool in their investigation into racial identity. If you find these findings as powerful and compelling as we do, please take a moment to subscribe, like, and share this video. Your comments and support empower us to create more content that educates and inspires. Together, let's continue exploring. The results of the doll test were quite shocking, but also very enlightening. The number of African American children who showed their preference for the white dolls and ascribed positive attributes to them, while describing Black dolls mostly as negative, was huge, such as being nice and pretty, to the white dolls, while the Black dolls were often described as bad or ugly. This pattern of results portrayed internalized racism, shaped by the general attitude of society towards race. For example, when children were asked with which doll they would like to play, many of them immediately showed the interviewer the white dolls. In fact, many children even responded that they wanted to be white, which really cemented the deleterious belief that whiteness was associated with beauty and goodness. This, in turn, reflected a profoundly psychic effect, where children internalized the repressive messages of society that actually rendered race synonymous with value. Perhaps one of the saddest aspects of the findings was to see the kids struggle when they were asked which doll looked like them. Many seemed very ill at ease and made uncomfortable hesitations, before reluctantly pointing to the black doll, despite having earlier labeled it with negative attributes. This inner struggle showed the psychological results of racism within society, with children struggling as they grapple with this dangerous dichotomy of racial preference and self-esteem. The Clarks reasoned that such preferences were indicative of the harmful effect caused by segregation on the self-esteem of Black American children. The implications of the Clark doll test went well over and above preferences for mere dolls. This was a strong statement on how segregation psychologically tortured Black American children. Through their work, the Clarks were showing the unmistakable evidence that the messages they were getting from society makes them hate themselves and go on to develop desires to become like whites. In a culture full of biases, the preference for white dolls became equated with a broader self-rejection of one's racial identity. Kenneth Clark explained that their refusal to like the black dolls symbolized internalized racism among the children, an emotional seething fostered by a society that was continuously associating whiteness with desirability and worthiness. In essence, these children were being taught, both overtly and covertly, that their own racial identity was something negative and undesirable. The children's preference for the white dolls was a reflection of the societal messaging that white was synonymous with good, beautiful, and virtuous, while black was associated with the opposite. The Clark doll test gained national importance when it was used in the 1950s as part of the evidence for cases filed against segregation in schools. The most prominent one among them was Brown v. Board of Education, in which several cases were combined concerning the constitutionality of racial discrimination in public schools. The NAACP lawyers realized that they needed concrete data to help prove their point, and the research by the Clarks thus matched their game plan perfectly. The Clarks testified in the Brown case, arguing very strongly that segregation prejudicially was affecting the psychic development of black children. Their testimony showed how segregation produced feelings of self-degradation and injured the educational potential of the child. The Clarks insisted that separate facilities could never be equal, but were mere dramatizations of inferiority and producers of negative self-images for blacks. The doll test was partly responsible for the unanimous decision of the Supreme Court in 1954 that declared racial segregation in public schools unconstitutional. Chief Justice Earl Warren's pronouncement that separate educational facilities are inherently unequal virtually echoed the findings of the Clarks, and at the same time pressed upon how such segregation, in a very racially segregated society, had to change. Despite its revolutionary implications, the doll test did not escape critical scrutiny. Among the most basic criticisms was that it lacked a control group. Critics noted that, without such a comparative analysis of children from integrated versus segregated environments, it would be quite hard to draw conclusions about where the damage in self-esteem had lain due to segregation. The Clarks were mainly concerned with children from segregated settings. Thus, the general applicability of their findings was questioned. Yet, despite these criticisms, the central finding of the doll test, that societal racism and segregation have a deleterious impact on the self-esteem and identity of Black American children, remains widely supported. The Clark doll test remains one of the most important studies in social psychology, whose results continue to echo in today's debates over race and identity. During the decades that have passed, the study has been replicated and modified numerous times, although its main message that children are very sensitive about messages of race in society and that bias begins early remains constant throughout. Similar trends were noted, showing that whereas some progress is recorded, preferences for whiteness and associated biases still continue. This happens both in integrated and segregated settings, depicting the depth of attitude that society holds toward race. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history and psychology. If you found value in our
So, it's cold, dark reality and existence in this society here. The doll test. They put the dolls in front of the children and ask the children, "What do you think about, or which of these would be a good doll?" And all the negative uh, depictions, they pointed to the black doll. And then they asked them, "Which doll looks like you?" And reluctantly, they pointed to the black doll. This was the reality that existed. I took that test, not take the test, I didn't take the test myself, but I took the data that I got from that test and I flipped it. And it's always the opposite. And it's not because it's the opposite because I just make it the opposite. It's the opposite because I deal with the reality in that exists. And what the reality is that um, you know I'm not a child. I'm an adult, and I know how we got to this place where we are now, where the children will look at a doll and think that a white doll will be the better doll, and the black doll will be the worst doll, and to think that their place in society is the worst place in society, but they don't understand that they have the opportunity to have the best place in society. But without the knowledge of what is available to you, little black child, um, you may not understand these things. But Akazaki Yahoo does. And I know the best mode of resolution and to keep the law, statutes, and the commandments of the Most High and to stay on his good side and not to
Con,
be subject to his judgments and his penalties, as our people have been for all of these years, for all of these generations, but uh, not to no end, because there's an end in sight, and it's just a matter of time. Every week we keep the Sabbath and we talk about these various things that have happened to our people, and we read scriptures and we try to get our mind, our mental, our spiritual lives intact and together for the sake of being prepared for the return of the Messiah. And when Messiah returns, all of this negative is going to be made positive, and all of this positive is going to be made negative, and the entire system will be turned up on its head. So um,
con,
that's what we look forward to. Scripture says, "Here is the patience and the faith of the saints." I'm gonna rest there. Go ahead, Akeem.
con. It says that we will be justified.
Indeed.
Uh, it's heartbreaking. You know what I mean? For because I've got two two young daughters. Well, one of them's not young. Well, they still young to me, but you know, we made it a focal issue to always purchase, you know, dolls that look like them. You know what I mean? And I pray that they understand their beauty. You know what I mean? Uh, it's crazy because we were talking about post traumatic, stress syndrome, or post traumatic stress syndrome, and that has been our plight, the plight of our people. Uh, really, before even the transatlantic, slave trade. Our people have had an issue. Valuing themselves in the covenant that was given to them. Uh, these struggles continue today. Uh, and the one way that we counter that is by, you know, communicating with the the young generations, showing them their value, showing them that there's nothing negative about your skin. You were made this way by the Abba,
Right.
who says, "Have I not made you as the Ethiopian?" You
Right.
know, which was, the Abba didn't say that because it was something negative.
Mm.
Said it was because it was something that he put in us. Uh, but in time, the whole world will see. Will will be revealed to truth. And like the scripts say, we will be justified in that day. All praises to the Most High.
Hallelujah. Indeed, indeed. We look forward to that day and that time and those circumstances turning right side up instead of upside down. Because right now society is upside down, and
Mhm.
right side up is our destiny, and that's what we await, the right side up of things. So praises to the Abba. We'll go ahead and close this on out. Get out of here nice and early, right at 11 o'clock, 11:02 by my reckoning. Uh, all right. We do this for a specific purpose, and it's lucky the reason we do it is because Romans chapter 10 and verse 1, brethren, my heart's desire and prayer to Ha'abba for Israel is that they might be saved. We want to see our people saved. We want to see our people set free. We want to see our people restored to the promise that the Most High had promised to this people to get back to where it is that He would have us to be. How we going to do it? Number one, we're going to keep the faith and the belief in Hamashiach, the Messiah, and His return to bring us justice and to set uh, us back up in prominence in this earth and to put us where we belong, where we should be, where we should have been, if not for our own misguided thinking and wrongdoings. Uh, Also, Ecclesiastes chapter 12 and verse 13, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear the Most High and keep His commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. It is so very important to understand in the conclusion of the whole matter. We are to fear the Most High and keep His commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. At the end of the day, when it is all said and done, all the dust is settled, and all the smoke is cleared, we will be judged on whether we have feared the Most High and kept His commandments. Why? Because this is the whole duty of man. I am your Akazaki Yahu, joined by my most esteemed Akinanaya, giving all praises, honor, and great esteem unto the Most High Power, Yahweh, Bashem, Hamashiach, Wamalak, Yahweh Shai, and to the 12 tribes of Israel, who are scattered to the four corners of the earth. I say Shalom, Wa, Baruchim, that is peace and blessings. And I cannot wait to the day when the Most High brings us back together and we are once again 12 tribes, one family, one nation under the Most High power, under one covenant, back in our own land with a heart of flesh and no more a heart of stone, with our enemies, our adversaries, and all those who hate us under our feet. Until that day come, shalom, family.
Shalom, Mr. Pekah.
I don't know if you're on mute. Can you hear me?
Shalom, Mr. Pekah.
We lost your audio. Test, test, test. Say something.
Shalom, Mr. Pekah.
Yeah, we lost you for some reason. Yeah, I don't know how. We lost you somehow, but it's all good. All praises to the Most High. Praise you, Abba Yah, Kwam Yasha Allah, and Barak Hashem. Yeah,
Yeah,
Halloween.